How we doing, everybody? Are you excited? Fantasy football is over. I had that weird tendency where I'm checking for updates like I need to potentially pick somebody up. But that's not the case. It's all over except the random carnival week where if you play DFS and you're stacking it, more power to you, because this is one wild week where some games matter, most don't. But I'm going to try to look at some of these games with a lot of implications, and I kind of forecasted how this season was going to end. We teased it last week, and we're going to talk about that game this week. But just as I kind of thought, if you believed the NFL wanted the best game to decide the 1 seed and home field throughout the NFC part of the playoffs, then I don't know. Maybe you took the Vikings to win. Well, I guess the Lions didn't matter. But we got that game that I personally have been yearning for, because while I didn't grow up with an NFL team, I find myself really rooting for one of these teams, but we'll get to that in just a second. Dave, I'm going to need you to kind of guide me through some things maybe I'm missing, because, with all my attention mostly focused on hockey as we're in the middle of winter. By the way, Happy New Year. I'm hoping you got some sort of sniffs you can point me towards that were flying under my radar in a week where I typically was like, yeah, maybe I'll wait for the playoffs to start putting in a couple of picks.
Happy New Year, brother. It's crazy. When you and I first started doing this show at the beginning of the year, was it like the first 3 or 4 weeks where dogs were 15-1 against the spread? 6+ point dogs, right? Were like 15-1 against the spread. They were 11-9 straight up. I'm not just talking like 2-3 point dogs. We're talking sizable touchdown dogs. Listen to this. I read this in an ESPN article yesterday. NFL betting favorites, known as the chalk, have won 183 games outright this season, 5 shy of the all-time mark set in 2005 with Week 18 pending.
Why did they have to throw that in there? Why did they have to say known as the chalk?
Yeah, right. Well, it was kind of like a quasi betting article, right? So I kind of get it. I continue. The favored team has won 71.8% of games entering the final week, the highest winning percentage for chalk since 2005, and second best since the NFL adopted a 16-game schedule in 1978, according to ESPN research. One more. Sportsbooks got off to a hot start this season, because this goes back to you and I. We've followed the journey every single week, with underdogs springing 26 upsets in September, the second most ever for the opening month. Nevada sportsbooks won a net $80.9 million in September, the most lucrative month in the state's 75-year betting history. And now, as the season is winding down, as we enter the final week, shit show of a week, I love it. It's my favorite week of the year. Now we're talking about the fact that favorites, talk about the tale of 2 seasons all in one, man. What a wild year we decided to kick the David and Dan off with.
You would think it's the polar opposite.
Yes.
From the pool shark mentality. If you believe in they and them and the others.
Well, careful.
Oh. That's a absurd horror movie with Kevin Bacon.
Really?
They created it on Peacock. It's called like They Them, where I watched almost every horror movie.
I didn't watch it, but it came out a couple years ago.
Alex, can you just pull a movie poster on that? I need to see what the hell, how they rolled. Of course, Kevin Bacon made it to the movie somehow.
Yeah.
He somehow made
Tremors.
it. Well, it's exactly what you would think. Who's running Vegas when they say they rigged it? I got news for you. It ain't any of them. Anyway, the typical pool shark hustle mentality, and something that I always said they're going to let you win your first free bet. You're going to cover your first. It's to give you some and then take that and a whole lot more as you chase some of those early winnings. Never in my life have I seen the polar opposite. No, we're going to rob you blind, public, because then you really wouldn't have more incentive to keep pushing. And it was one of the most legendary runs that I talked about last week as we closed out. I said 2024 was the year of the Dan, like those Chinese New Years. So congratulations, Dan. I got to say, Maybe it was the inception of this show that like had a Chucky curse in the air and allowed all these favorites to continue to cover straight through last week. I mean, Dave sent me a screenshot showing just how many favorites.
15-1, I think, and 13-3 against the spread.
The one that you sent me, does that mean favorites, meaning there was a minus next to their name, or does it mean public betting favorites? Because can't
No,
an
no, no, no,
underdog
no.
be?
Like there was a minus next to their name. They went 15-1 straight up and 13-3 against the spread. The 15-1 straight up, okay, still crazy, but the 13-3 against the spread was. I have a bit of a theory on this too.
I'm a fan of a good theory.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just a theory, and I could be flat out wrong. But
or you could be flat out right.
I could be. I've been on a decent amount of this chalk lately, and one of the reasons for it is you look at some of these games, and it feels like the discrepancy, and again, it could just be recency bias, but I think probably a decent amount of people watching this would agree with me, particularly late in the year with the amount of injuries and the extended season now. I think the discrepancy in talent has gotten so dramatic in a lot of areas that some of these lines, the amount of times this year that I've been like, I don't think you could set this line big enough, right? Like Detroit, Jacksonville, Detroit, Tennessee, in Detroit, Green Bay, New Orleans last week was another one, right? You look at some of these games and you just go, well, where does it end? Like, where does it end where you're just taking a team? I mean, you can't set them I can't set everyone at a 21.5 point favorite, right? Because then you'll probably get jammed up in the opposite direction. But when you're setting these at like 13.5, you got Green Bay at home in Lambeau against the Saints and Spencer Rattler with no competent skill players. What else do you expect, right? So I see so many of these lines and I go, yeah, sure, it's a healthy number, but should it not be?
How about we start talking about the one you want, and then let's move over to the game that I want. Before the show, you'd mentioned, make sure you bring up, and we'll do it right now, and that is, if you could lead into it, these Jets and Miami Dolphins. There has to be a reason that you're bringing this up.
Happy New Year to everybody, first off. Second of all, let's dive in. All right, so here's why. This could be the Aaron Rodgers send-off. He's one touchdown shy of 500. So I do a betting video, the picks for every game on the Odd Shopper channel every week. Shout out to you guys who have come and checked that out. Shout out to Andy for introducing me to the scene for the Francess scene. But I was reading the comments.
They're fans. They're big fans.
I was reading the comments this morning, and so many of them were like, hey, great pick, but I don't understand this one. Great pick, but I don't understand this one. And then there was a slew of comments talking about incentives. If you're into the incentives game, and we can dive in a little later, feel free, right? It's fun. But it's far better from like a DFS perspective when the salary is fixed on these guys. The books, if you don't think the books are baking these incentives into the line, you've got another thing coming.
What do you mean, Dave? They didn't think about it. Only us and the entirety of the internet who are doing videos on the incentives have thought about it.
Right. The books didn't know that Mike Evans is 85 yards shy of 1,000 to tie Jerry Rice's record for 11 straight seasons. You're right. That may have just slipped through the cracks.
I have a random question. Do you think there's a boardroom out there, or if not a boardroom, just two people, their job is to peruse the internet for what's being put out there?
Absolutely.
Maybe so they're sitting in a room looking at me and you saying, look at these fucks. They told everybody about the so-and-so. And their job is just to sit in a boardroom on YouTube and go through videos to see where people are being skewed and then how to potentially mitigate that as soon as possible. Hence Kamara's yards going down by 15 that week.
Yeah, and I don't just think it's that, though. You got a lot of these, like, fresh out of college kids. We've seen it, like, in Draftkings, their headquarters and stuff, where it's just this huge room of, fresh out of college age looking kids on the computer. There's no doubt that they have to have a pulse on that stuff, right? Because why would you not when you've got so many casual bettors jumping in?
Hey, pricks! I know you're watching. Maybe This whole episode is decoy picks to drive the price the other way. And then I'm just going to be hammering. You never know. I'm literally going to come up with a series of hand signals like a third base coach to let Dave know which ones are the real ones and which ones are the fake ones. So be on the lookout because I'm ready for you. I know what you guys are up to.
You aren't saying we're on the side of the books. You're saying the idea is to throw the books off here a little bit, which in turn ends up just throwing off the entirety of our audience as well.
Yes. Well, I do want to say, speaking of the comments, somebody said, these guys are definitely paid by the books.
No.
How does that work? How would that even, Andy, it's Caesar's here. And, if you can just keep bringing up that Demario Douglas thing, you really would be doing us a favor. And if you check your Caesars account and you do that, you'll notice a couple extra bonus bets. How would that work?
Christmas present in there. It's right, because also we had people say that all the time with like our daily fantasy content on our Stochastic channel, because that's been around way longer than we've done betting, because betting has only been legal in a lot of states for like 2017, 2018. They'd be like, these guys are intentionally misleading us to get us off the good players and bring ownership up on bad players. It's like, listen, dude, we have phenomenal paid products that we would love people to use because they work and you will win with them, right? But also, if we were intentionally giving out bad information, we would have no quality reputation at all. Right? Like, sure, entertainment's a factor here. The same with you and me doing this right now. But if you're consistently week over week giving out dog shit information, what happens is your entire channel, your entire brand, every show dries up and people stop. Why am I even talking about this?
No, don't worry. I'm going to put this to an end real quick. BetMGM. You have the biggest dog shit same game parlay features I've ever seen in my life for the NHL. Caesars, you had good features. We were sticking it up your ass, and then you removed them. So now there's nothing I can really give on your awful same game parlay options. Draftkings, you begrudgingly removed alt sides and totals from my NHL same game parlays. We're appreciative that you added multi-points and things like that in the same game parlays, but you don't have much other competition. You're praying Bet365 isn't legal in more states. So thank you for neutering those prices. FanDuel, you think I don't know the neutering you're doing on some of these prices? How you look to your left and you go, what did DraftKings do? And then you add exactly what they added for the NHL features, but at a slightly worse price? How about you be the first to something once in a while instead of being look to your left, look to your right cowards? Any other major sports books? Bet Rivers. Maybe your site shouldn't look like Craigslist and you can attract more customers. How's that, you filthy rat bastards? You want to know what somebody who doesn't care about the actual sports betting world thinks? That. So all the opinions that were just expressed are mine and mine alone. Please do not subject Dave to any penalties that I may incur over the next month for what I just said.
I don't work for the books either. You're not saying anything I don't agree with.
No, but I'm sure you place bets on them.
Of course I do.
Yeah, they're going to just go on your account. No, that's
They already have.
Yeah.
They already have. It doesn't matter. Hey, Jets. How about the Jets, Andy?
Yep. Sorry. That's what you get. That's what you get here. That's what you get.
I'm all about it.
It's week 18. This is what it's about.
Yeah. So this is just one of those spots to me where I looked at it and I'm going, all right, so we know the Jets are bad, right? But does somebody want to tell me, and maybe you could do this, but does somebody want to tell me why in any spot, the Dolphins, I guess last week against the Browns, but that makes sense, why the Dolphins are 1.5 point favorites with Tyler Huntley expected to start? I mean, I know he was fine last week. The Browns are terrible. The Jets aren't good, but this is a divisional spot to close out the year. Possibly Aaron Rodgers, as he acknowledged yesterday, potentially his last game playing alongside guys like Devontae Adams. I mean, if I'm betting either side of this game, I was shocked. I honestly thought more people would be like, that actually makes some sense. But I guess people are so soured on the Jets, which is rightfully justified. But there is nothing. We saw how this team functioned or didn't function with Tyler Huntley earlier in the year. I mean, this was a terrible, terrible offense. So, yeah, I think the Jets in the final game, final home game, potentially Aaron Rodgers' final game of his career against very likely going to be Tyler Huntley, who can't get the ball to his pass catchers in even, modestly decent spots. To me, this looks like a fun spot to hit.
They lost every single game with Huntley earlier in the year. So unless you want to say, well, he was new there and now he understands the system and he has a win, I would much rather have the Jets, who having nothing to play for is a good thing.
Yeah.
In that, who cares? So it goes one of two ways. Either it doesn't go your way and then you just take your destruction because who cares? We lose every week anyway. Or you go up in a game and then it's like everything's working. We're freewheeling. It's easy. Last week you saw the opposite. Once they were down like 17, not the 29, it's like, all right, this game's over.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah. In a game against Huntley, that's very unlikely to happen, that they're going to go down multiple scores at home. And I also believe part of that Murphy's Law. I believe this is all designed, in theory, to go down to that very end. You're going to get that Bengals win the day before. If you see the Bengals win the day before, that's your wink that Dolphins aren't winning this game. Because that drama of the Bengals getting in the last possible minute, I think is going to be closed in the worst way possible to all Bengals fans. And this is all part of my screw job prevent defense. As an Islander fan, I knew how it was going to end to us. Alex, I told him years ago we needed the Lightning to get eliminated before the conference final for us to have a chance. They didn't get eliminated. How did we lose? In Game 7 in a 1-0 game. What can go wrong will go wrong. Your worst fears come true. And the worst fear for all Bengals fans, and I know this, is that the Chiefs control their destiny and everything's going to work out up until the very point that the Chiefs lose it in the fourth quarter. The leaked script here on a Dave and a Dan. People love using that term. There's my leaked script. That's how I scripted my Week 18 to conclude.
I'm all about it. And it's going to be fun. It's a shame that Reed is sitting as starters. I don't blame him for it, but wouldn't that be something? If Cincinnati knocks off the Steelers in Pittsburgh, Denver's a 10.5, 11-point favorite at this point.
It's going to happen. No. That game,
you think Kansas City... What do you think is going to happen?
Everything's going to happen because I think since he plays the day before, they structured it that way, right?
They play Saturday. And also, quickly, the Steelers can win their division with a Ravens loss, but the Ravens play first. So the Steelers will already know whether or not they're getting in. Now, the Steelers could also win even if the Ravens win and the Steelers get the 5 seed, which I think is important because that means that they would face the Texans, who are just flat out limping into the postseason. Or if the Ravens win, they're 18-point favorites against the Browns, and the Steelers lose, Andy. If the Chargers win, they get the 5th, and then the Steelers have to go to Baltimore as the 6th seed for the wild card round. So there's implications there regardless.
Yeah. The problem is the Steelers have lost by like a combined 80 points these last 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, so and they faced some tough defenses, though. They had the Eagles, they had the Chiefs, they had the Ravens, right? Like they've had 3 really brutal games, no doubt. Cincinnati's defense stinks, but Joe Burrow just carved up Patrick Surtain, Riley Moss, like a really good secondary and good defense. And sure, it took overtime, but I mean,
which has more drama? Which creates more drama? The Bengals or the Steelers winning this game? Which creates more Sunday drama?
You're absolutely right. I'm
going with that team. I'm going with the Bengals in this one to get their heart ripped out by the Chiefs yet again.
Yep.
So in the wrong direction, by the way. So yeah, I'm with you on that Jets play. Then I want to talk about the game that it's really the premier matchup on this slate. Really, it's a mini playoff game. The winner has the best possible path to the Super Bowl. The loser has to play every single playoff game on the road. A lot is on the line here.
Yeah.
And you guys know me. I've been overly critical of quarterbacks. I'm like, I'm not buying into CJ Stroud. I'm not buying into this guy. I'm not buying into Anthony Richardson. I'm not buying into Jaden. I just don't care. I need to see it for an extended period of time. Well, the asterisk on that is I seen something out of a certain quarterback for years, but because of a Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate events, it hasn't worked out for him. And the first time the offensive pieces are put around him, and the first time he's in an offensive-oriented system, you're seeing what I thought he always had the capability of being, and that is my guy, Sam Darnold, who it's tough to stick by him, but you saw traces of this. In all these garbage Jets years, he managed to scrape the best record out of them with Adam Gase. He got the miserable Carolina Panthers to like 3-0 or 4-0. He started off one of those years. It was there, but he was still so young and in the worst systems possible. And now that he's in a system with all these weapons, this doesn't look like the Kirk Cousins. People are going to go, no, but it's the offensive coach. Go watch the Kirk Cousins games where every game was decided within 3 the entire game. Not we're going up 4 touchdowns on a team like the Vikings have done many times this year, and then it ends up kind of close. I have full faith in Sam Darnold this year, and I am rooting for him. And the first game with the Lions' full defense was going back, forth, back, forth. I'm going, not even out of public opinion or anything, maybe a little emotion, but I feel the way I see this guy operating, Darnold's going in there and he's coming out with a win. I'm going with the money line.
Ooh, I love it.
Minnesota Vikings.
I love it.
I am.
I already bet it yesterday, but I bet the side. I bet the spread minus or +3. Got it at -110. There's -115s out there still. I think that's perfectly fine. And of course, if you like Detroit, I'd probably pay a little bit extra for the 2.5 in a spot like this. I mean, it is such an even matchup. If you look, almost every single game in the NFC North that didn't include the Chicago Bears has been decided by a field goal or less. Outside of that one Detroit and Green Bay game where you had Jordan Love coming back from a groin injury and he wasn't 100% and the game was closer than the box score would have indicated. If I'm getting 3 here, I just simply don't know how I'm not pulling the trigger on that number. Another thing too, Andy, and you laid it out pretty nicely here. Aside from Darnold being good, I look at a spot like this and I think to myself, all right, so the Lions, first of all, that Ben Johnson offense was amazing on Monday. What a fun game to watch. I got a bit lucky. I laid the 3.5 on Detroit, but this is one of these spots where we watched on Monday. Brock Purdy and a team that didn't have anything to play for, they carved them up. Like the defensive injuries that they've suffered, now you see it against competent offenses. It's a thing. We saw it against the Buffalo Bills as well. So do we have much reason to believe that this can't? Do you know what the total is? It's a 57-point total in this game. I can't think of one that we've seen higher than that or even within a couple points this year. 3-point dogs in a win or not go home, but like straight do or die spot for sure. I gotta take the Vikings here.
I just see multiple paths for the Vikings to do well. And nowadays we've come to that point where Detroit has one way to do well. That's it. It's they have to put up a ton of points. And what I want to say is like, yeah, you can say that they've been doing that successfully. The first team that's able to create some pressure on that offensive line and is able to get through a little bit, they're going to dominate this team. Goff is a statue in the pocket. That fantastic offensive line has been the only reason they've been able to just go shot for shot. 1 week of even remote penetration, and we're going to see that Goff that we've seen in previous years. I mean, he has no escapability. He crumbles. If they have time, then they'll be fine. But really what this comes down to, and you saw these go the Lions' way in that last game, the 4th downs, more of them fell their way than not, and it was Purdy who had more interceptions than like a turnover on those 4th downs. So while Darnold is prone to a pick, maybe even 2, I'm hoping it's 1 or fewer. I see a couple different ways that they can win this game. I see one way for Detroit to win the game. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, Detroit, I'll guarantee you they ain't winning a Super Bowl. I've never seen a team who can just get walked on like that, been able to just win every single round. Makes it easier when you have a bye. But, I mean, if they play a team like the Mahomes Chiefs with that good defense, I mean, Lamar in his MVP year last year, at home on his own field, was held to like 3 points through 3 quarters.
Yeah,
There's not a chance in hell that Detroit team is just marching down on KC every single drive. No way. There's no way they're winning a Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Really?
And one thing that I did bring up, no, there's no way. There's no way. If they win a Super Bowl, let me think. What's something I can do for these assholes who think I don't like back up what I say? $1,000, I'll do something with it. Like, I'll piss it away, somehow get it to you people. If they win a Super Bowl, you're all getting a part of $1,000. But if there's a lot of viewers, that really doesn't amount to much. I don't know. It's got to be put in a pot for something. Maybe we can, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what I should do with this 1,000 if they win it, because they're not winning it. I am zero concerned. But I did tell you guys last week, I know it will take 1, 2, 3 things, but the value you were getting on the Vikings futures, everything from the division, which was at like plus 270 or maybe even like 300, I was going to say the Western Conference, the NFC, if they do win this game, you're talking about them having to win 2 games, having home field throughout those. And that might look pretty good after this Sunday night game is over.
I'm excited for this game, though. I'll tell you that much.
Me
This
too.
is a really fun game. It's a really fun game, and there aren't that many of them. There's a couple spots I don't mind. I think San Francisco plus 4.5 is actually quite interesting.
Who the hell are they playing? I don't even know.
The Cardinals, and it's probably going to be Dobbs, but the Cardinals, like, why are the Cardinals laying 4.5?
Hey, you got your Trey McBride touchdown.
Yeah, I wasn't betting it. Dude, every week he didn't score, the odds got shorter. So I think he was like minus 110 to score. Again, you think the books don't know this stuff, right? Like, if you had just looked at, and of course it's just the law of averages at this point, but they all knew people were hammering Trey McBride to score at whatever odds there were because it was everywhere. It was everywhere. I also, here's another one I find interesting. Mind you guys, when we're talking about these week 18 games, like you got to be careful, but if you think you can find some edges, then I say fire. I look at it. There's 4 different buckets of games, Andy, right? There's one game, or there's one type of game that's like a legit playoff game, even though it's not the playoffs. Vikings-Lions, Bengals-Steelers, even. That's that type of game. Then there's the type of game where neither team has anything to play for, but they're going to play all of their starters anyway. So what does it really matter? It's just like a week 16. They've been eliminated for a while anyway. Who cares? Then there's the game where you have a team that has something to play for and the other one doesn't. That gets tricky. And then lastly, you have the one where the other team has nothing to play for, but then the one team is sitting all of their starters, like the Eagles or the Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs. And you could say a team has something to play for and the other team's sitting their starters. You see what I'm saying, though? There's 4 distinct type of games that you get in Week 18. And you could argue some of them are just flat out preseason games.
And that's why this has got you so excited. You are like Mr. Preseason. Yeah. It gets you up in the morning. You're loving it. It's the end of summer. People think they have weeks to wait, like me, until football starts. Not you. You are just crafting up those fourth quarter triple backup touchdown passes. And maybe that's why you can kind of excel. I just saw that Kyler Murray, I believe he has an incentive if you want to go the incentive route. I think he has a weird one for $750,000 that if he gets a rushing touchdown in 50 yards, he gets $750,000. I guess it begs to ask the question, unless this is lying to me, I'm looking at something that says player incentives NFL week 18. K. Murray, 1 rush TD plus 50 yards equals $750K. It'd be great if this website was just lying. Do you imagine that? They just made up more things, and you're like, yo, I got to take that. And then,
wait, it turns out it's the sports books, just like under
it's us working for the books, bringing it up right now.
Yeah, fake company, and they just throw all of these out there. They jack the odds up a ton. or the line up a ton, and then Kyler has like 5 rushing yards because he doesn't
So
want to
I'm
get
gonna
hurt
I'm
in
gonna
the
say
last
this.
week.
There's a 90% chance a website that published this is correct. That Kyler Murray 1 rushing touchdown plus 50 yards rushing equals 750 grand. Is that guy gonna put that helmet in there? I don't know if it's got kind of that Pro Bowl feel where they're not hitting too hard. That could be a decent one. What kind of price would you get on something like that, Dave? Do you know off the top of you? You don't have to calculate. If you had to guess, it's got to be a pretty good price on that, right?
Well, normally Kyler Murray's touchdown props are like anywhere, depending on the matchup, anywhere from like +3 to +400 or something like
Oof.
that. But yeah, I mean, I remember betting one. It's not up yet, by the way. I checked. I remember betting one because it showed good value in the odd shopper tools a few weeks ago. And I think it was at like +400. But I'll tell you what, not going to be the case this week.
Tajay Spears left that last game, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah,
I,
concussion.
I am seeing Tony Pollard, if he gets 83 rushing yards, he gets to 250 grand. For a running back, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Oh, there it is. 200K with two. Wow, are they really going to shove him in twice? But how does it work? Does the coach work for the owner and GM? Or, like, if you're the coach, and I know we got Tony Pollard on what, a 1-year deal? Wouldn't you be more inclined to screw him and side with the owner?
Coaches generally in situations like this do side with the players, though.
That's something
I'm
right
just
there,
saying,
man.
like you've seen it before where coaches and like try to get him those numbers. Prize picks, some of these pick'em sites, the first we'll say like first to market here. Those are probably the spots that I would, if I'm chasing incentives, it would be on these pick'em sites because they post the lines before anything else is out and they actually
Ah,
seem soft.
that's very good advice. That's Tony the Tiger great advice, because if you thought that they weren't aware of these incentives, you seeing any coincidences with the lines that aren't listed? They happen to be the ones right on your screen for some of these incentives. So Houston has nothing to play for, correct?
No, they've had that 4 seed locked up for a while, but they're limping into the playoffs. And this is reminiscent of the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Remember, the Eagles limped into the postseason. They got beat up by the Cardinals. They got beat up by the Giants. We're talking like they opened the season as if the look ahead lines, like before the season started, they were 14-point favorites against the Cardinals. They were, 12 against the Giants. And then even as you got to those weeks, they were big double-digit favorites. They lost both of them outright. They got crushed. They limped into the postseason. They got killed by the Bucks, and the rest was history. D'Amico Ryans is not happy with this team. I actually bet the Texans' first half money line in this game. Was like, oh no, I bet him minus half a point at +115. I wanted the plus money there because I could see D'Amico Ryans going, look, because he already said that we're playing to win this. We're starting our guys. I could see this like quasi preseason style, Andy, where you have let's say if they come out strong in the first quarter in the first half, then Davis Mills and the backups come in the second half because they've got it locked up. But he knows you can't crawl in to the playoffs. I mean, national television on Christmas Day, they got shit on by the Ravens. I mean, embarrassingly bad football, right? To the point where now you're coming off of that game. You're one game away from the postseason, playing terrible football. If they come out here with all the backups and give these guys a week of rest, not to mention they've already had additional rest because they played on a Wednesday, so they've basically had a mini bye. I think you have to run your guys out there at least for the first half.
Correct me if I'm wrong. If that's kind of how you feel, and I kind of agree with you, wouldn't you live bet this game and anybody you see accumulate some stats in the first quarter and a half, take their under for the game, knowing that they probably might not play the second half?
Absolutely. Well, we don't know, but absolutely 100%. And that is something that when you're talking live betting, a lot of times these algorithms don't factor that stuff in, right? Like these are just constantly updating. I think you could potentially make a similar argument with the Baltimore Ravens as well as 18-point favorites. if they go up by 21 in the first half, they know that they've got a playoff game next week at home, but you got Dorian Thompson-Robinson and potentially Bailey Zappi starting, according to Kevin Stefanski. Jameis is expected to be the inactive emergency backup quarterback again. I think Baltimore could offer another interesting proposition where you come into halftime, you get close to halftime, and all of these props haven't moved. You're going to have to hit them quick. That could be another good under spot going into the second half if they're up by a ton in the first half.
Yeah, you almost have to be like Peyton Manning behind the line of scrimmage while these games are going on, just seeing who's updating, who's got
Big
what,
time.
who's likely to go out, and to get them, you got to be pretty instant with them. One that I just saw here, and also Alex just pulled up on that, Cortland Sutton in a game they have to win. That's no chump change that he's playing for.
Yep.
I think he's playing for, was it $500,000, and he needs 82 receiving yards? Is his prop listed yet, or is that one they're also holding on? Because that's a high total for Cortland Sutton. I'm very interested to know if there was no incentive. What do you think the line?
79.5 on Caesar. Caesars does have it at 79.5. See,
What
look,
hell?
see these other ones though. Look, this is what I'm saying. The books bake it in, and these pick'em sites. Look at the difference there.
I got news for you. Hard Rock is real.
Kind of.
It is.
Kind
It's in like 5-6 states. It's like Bet365.
I'm joking. I'm saying they have some of the softest odds for sure. Like Hard Rock, I would not be surprised that they didn't know there was an incentive for Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, what are they doing down there? What are you doing down there in Florida?
How much
could
does
be
Sutton,
asked a lot of different ways.
How much does he need?
80 something.
I was gonna say just middle it. If it was like 75 or so, just middle it. Yeah, okay. 82. Allow me to just point one thing out though, right?
Go ahead.
This is a nice chunk of money that would be coming Cortland Sutton's way. But I always try and identify what the context is around incentives for individual players. Here's what I mean. Take a Tony Pollard, nothing to play for. Why not try and get it for him? Some of these other guys, nothing really to play for. Why not try and get it for him? Geno Smith would be an example of that. He's got a few statistical spots that he could hit for a good chunk of money and 10 wins too. But Sean McVay's not going to play his starters. This is a must-win game for Denver. So I do think when you're game planning something like this, the primary focus is not let's get Cortland Sutton this $500,000. Can it happen against Chiefs backups? Without a doubt. Same thing with Mike Evans. It's a do or die game for the Tampa Bay Bucks as big 13.5-point favorites against the Saints. Mike Evans could easily clear that number because he's a fantastic receiver and he's the alpha in that offense. But I don't think either of these teams are going into their respective games knowing that they need to win or they likely don't make the playoffs and going, all right, fellas, look, it'd be nice to win a Super Bowl this year. The postseason sounds like fun. We've been there a couple of times. We'd like to get back. Some it's been longer than others since we've been there. But just remember, this is Cortland Sutton's day. And this is Mike Evans' day. We take care of that first, then we can worry about winning a football game. All right? Yeah? Of course not. No one's doing that. So while they could still get there, both of them are going to have cupcake matchups and they're the best player on their own respective teams. There's no way in their spots that they're going into this game like we got to get these guys theirs. Unless there's a blowout. And if it's a blowout, all things change.
You're 100% right. My buddy who's a big Vikings fan just reminded me that Adrian Peterson could have easily broke Dickerson's record a couple years back. Well, not a couple years back, quite a few years back. But they needed to win the final game against, I believe it was like the Packers, just to get in the playoffs. He was literally like 6 yards short. But because it came down to like the fourth quarter, they couldn't just force the record when they needed like a touchdown on the drive. So he missed it by a trivial amount of yards that they easily could have got to him to break the all-time record. But obviously, winning and playoffs will take precedent. But with that said,
Andy, that's an actual incredible record. Here, we're just talking about incentives. We're not even talking about, we're talking about just straight arbitrary, not like meaningless numbers in the grand
Yeah,
scheme of things that no one will ever remember. If you're not going to do it for Peterson, you think you're going to do it for Sutton? The
absolutely
64
not.
and a half, that's just an absolute smash anyway. I mean, why would you not bet? Is that still out there? Is that actually accurate? Are
I
they
just
still putting
looked.
it?
I just looked. Yes.
I mean, that just on its own without incentives.
Oh, it's insane. It's something's not correct. Something's
I'm
not
throwing
correct
this
about
one
that.
in as well.
I don't
I've
know.
thought
I don't
about
know
it.
I don't know what determines the number for one site opposed to another's, but usually everyone catches up to that highest number because all the other ones from Prize Picks to Publix and wherever and Fliff and the Hard Rock, all lingering around the same area. So outside of this particular game or this particular incentive, we talked about the games that kind of matter. Is there anything else, a Dave special that I'm not aware of on this entire slate that you'd like to bring to my attention before we go embark on our final journey during the regular season, before we get to these playoff games? Because I do believe the year of the Dan has concluded, and it is time for the year of the Dave. So let's see if there's anything that, any little secret I can pry from you before we go here.
All right. Well, I mean, in the spirit of the year of the Dan, why don't we just grab another one of those? You
So
ready?
we're gonna go with a Dan. Okay.
But again, I don't know if it is because I don't know if you can make these numbers big enough. Uh,
All right.
the Green Bay Packers are 10-point favorites against the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams was pressured. Caleb Williams was pressured 55% of the time last game. He took 7 sacks, was 4 for 12 under pressure for 45 yards, and was 0 for 5 on pass attempts, 20 plus yards downfield. Now, that's just one feature in all of this. Matt LaFleur is going to play to win. So is Dan Quinn with the Commanders. They're jockeying between the 6th and 7th seed, which you could argue is important because the 7th seed travels to Philly to face the Eagles. May not want to do that, right? It's possible you might want to face whoever lands in the 3 seed, which is either going to be the Bucs or the Rams, probably the Bucs because McVay's not playing his starters. But do you really think that the Bears at this stage of the year, it's going to be 19 degrees in Green Bay? Like, does this, I don't know, does this feel like a game where they show up? They haven't showed up in games where you'd think they show up. So I was genuinely a little bit shocked that it was only 10 points. And we'll go back to the well of the Dan. And this is probably one of those spots to wrap it up.
Village of the Damned.
Yeah, that was a really
guess-
good one on your part.
I guess if I was gonna have one more before we go here, my coward way to play a Dan play. I mean, I kind of been barking up the tree. I don't want to sound like too much of a regular guy with this whole Mike Evans thing. But what I do like, this is what I did last week. My cowardly way to take Evans without taking the chalk gets the record. I took the over on his longest reception, which was in the mid-20s last week. He caught a 30-something yarder. Give me that. Give me the over on longest reception for Mike Evans. That will be my way. It's like I'm taking some of the Dan and at least making it my own. That's how I have to do things.
Well,
I can't,
You'll appreciate this then. Because they got the Saints, right? The New Orleans Saints this week.
Holy crap. Look at that yardage total.
Yeah, because exactly. The books aren't going to set it at 85 and a half, which is where it would. Do you think on an average day that Mike Evans would have a essentially 100-yard receiving prop? Of course not.
He was 52 when he came back from the injury.
I know. I think you and I were talking about it when there were 45s out there. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. What do you think they're going to do, right? What do you think they're going to do? This is what they're going to do. You're good. If he needs 85 to hit 1,000, he needs 85. And I think he needs a touchdown too for another type of incentive. Like go to Mike Evans touchdown. Oh, but yeah, Saints have allowed their bottom 5 or top 5, you could say, in explosive pass plays allowed this year. So that just helps you out even more on Evans. Yeah, look, he's minus 130 to score, which That actually seems kind of normal given how involved he is. But 96, if there was no incentive, this is a regular week. What's he at? 82 and a half? 79 and a half?
Yes, I'm putting him
Right?
in the 70s. Until this record thing came about, do you remember a couple of weeks back when I was giving it out saying I think they're going to get him there one way or another? It was so manageable to the point that I kept bringing it up to you. It was like 60s. So, I mean, this is a precipitous incline from where we were then. I mean, I would never take the over on this, but I'm going to do my cowardly longest reception. That's where I'm going to go because I do feel like he is their lone vertical receiver. They're not doing that with McMillan. Cade Otton hasn't even played these last couple of weeks. If he's throwing it down the field, it's to Mike Evans and this New Orleans defense. I mean, Green Bay had all sorts of long completions against them. I didn't check and see what those Raiders receivers did last week or Brock Bowers, but I like my chances with the Mike Evans over on longest reception. I think that just about does it for this carnival week of a Dave and a Dan.
Fun week.
We got to the bottom of some things. Like I said, if you foresee any games where these guys are going to be in there, then they're going to potentially yank them. For me, I think this might be a week of live bets where if you can sniff out something like that Houston team sitting in the second half, take those live unders right after you see somebody have a big gain towards like some midway through the second quarter or something like that. I guess, I don't know, I'll report back next week. Dave, thank you for the insight as always, bringing some stuff to our attention that maybe we haven't thought about. Let's see how this year goes. Let's see if the public continues to eat. I'm obviously skeptical that it continues, but maybe it's like a seed. Maybe the year of the Dan has the dash. Like, you know how NBA champions, it's the 2023, 2024, 2025 champs. Maybe that's what we're in, 2024, 2025 Dans. It's their season. I guess we will find out at the end of this week. If you can, do the favor that I always ask for, the big three, like, comment, subscribe. And why don't you click those notifications so you know when these videos come out. Definitely check out Dave's stuff over at OddsShopper. We're just talking about his fantastic thumbnails before and how sometimes less is more. And definitely go check those out, Dave. If there's anything you want to say, feel free.
No, man. Fun show, fun season. We're going to do some postseason?
I'd say it's up to you. It's up to you.
I'm happy to keep. It's up to you, really, but I'm happy to keep it going.
It's up to you, folks. Let us know. Do you want the playoff episodes, or if you can't concoct a 15-leg parlay, are you guys not interested? Let us know if you want to see some more Dave and a Dan. We've had a blast doing it. I have no problem continuing to do it a few more weeks. We look forward to it as long as you guys continue to enjoy it. We'll be back with you next week, unless you guys are all disgusted. Take it easy.